Okay.
Hey, I'm good. Let's get started. So I am Sheri, and I've got Jessica Knight here with me. We are two survivor members of the Arizona Human Trafficking Survivors Coalition, and today we just want to have a conversation about the Diddy verdict. So Jessica, why don't you start off?
I just wanted to share that, I was shocked. I was really shocked with the verdict. Hurt as well, I want to say. And my heart really goes out to all the victims that were hurt by not just P. Diddy, but the whole ring or however the process went down. There's a lot of abuse when this goes on. There's a lot of fear that goes on, and my heart really goes out to how much the those that testified um, poured out, and how much courage it really took for them to stand up and to share their voice. And I am really concerned of the backlash because um, what did law enforcement promise them? I feel like the perception was this was going to be a slam dunk. So, are those that testified, are their lives in danger? Is there going to be backlash on them? And I just honestly hope and pray that whatever town they live in, that the survivor community there will reach out to them and make sure that they're safe, and that um, however they're feeling is addressed. And the main thing that they're not going through this alone. I mean, I know that they have lots of support, but this is a time for survivors to unite, and I want to say welcome them into the fold, into a community, um, to address the disappointment, the hurt, and the disappointment from this verdict.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that there were high expectations
Hmm.
for sex trafficking charges, but I truthfully have to say I am not surprised by the verdict, only because the defense just had to poke holes and put that little seed of doubt on whether it was consensual or not consensual. And so they did their job. The prosecution, they did a lot, but it's interesting too because I've been listening to other people talking about this throughout the day, and you have to wonder too, how does personalities pertaining to like the legal counsel and the jurors, how do they mesh? You can't help it. We look at people and we're like we say we like this person or we don't like this person, either based on
Hmm.
their looks or how they're talking. And so I wonder sometimes just um how that might have played a role too.
And then my understanding was this was the federal
Mhm.
case, not the local.
Right.
Um, and I don't know. I didn't realize that it was just a federal case until one of the other advocates in the fight mentioned that this was the federal one, and that
Uh-huh.
that prayerfully the victims will pursue abuse charges locally in their own state, which I hope we see happen.
Yeah, I wonder what the jurisdiction is. So a lot of that happened in California. So I wonder,
Yes.
I mean, what the statute of limitations is in that state.
Yeah,
And,
that's true.
and now I kind of think maybe, especially in Cassie's case, she might be reluctant to pursue anything further because she was so brave to step up and share very intimate and very hard details. As survivors, we understand this, and I don't know if she will. I found it interesting. I took pictures of some comments that uh, so this was a comment from one of Combs' lawyers,
Okay.
Mark Agnafilio, portrayed the Bad Boys Records founder as the victim of overzealous prosecutors who exaggerated elements of his lifestyle and recreational drug use to bring charges that resulted in what he called a fake trial. He said the women were willing participants.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's what he said. And I think that goes back to the fact that people just don't understand the mental element of human trafficking. That it
Yes.
can look like you're a willing participant, but you're really not, because you know what will happen to you if you don't do certain things.
Yeah,
So,
there was another advocate that mentioned that he had threatened her family,
oh, yeah,
Cassie's family. So how can you be a willing participant if you're in fear of your life, number one, and then you're in fear of your family's life as well, which is very common with victims and survivors of human trafficking.
absolutely. When people, and that's one of the things that they use to keep you doing what they want you to do, is that fear factor. That fear of maybe not so much harm to yourself, but to people that you love.
Hmm.
And it's not something that people want to have on their shoulders as a thing. Let's see. Well, this was another thing that I read somewhere, because they were talking about how I was listening to another advocate, and of course, in a trial for trafficking, you have to prove act, means, and purpose. So obviously, they said the act and the means were met, and this is just somebody else's opinion. So act is considered transportation, harboring, obtaining, maintaining, recruiting, providing, soliciting, advertise, patronizing. And then means was through force, fraud, or coercion. So all that happening. But then it was for purpose is for commercial sex. Something of monetary value has to be exchanged for the sex act. And this particular advocate was saying that that was not met by the prosecution. And I don't know if I see it that way, because
I agree.
she was promised a record deal when she was like 19 years old. Now, I don't know what all was said in court, since it wasn't public. I'm just
Hmm.
relying on people in the courtroom. But she was promised lots of things by him. And so how is that not purpose?
And how is that not that, sexual harassment charges in corporate America, um, if an individual is like a leader, of a person that can make decisions, how is that not illegal? Like, if she was promised things, the coercion part of it, she was manipulated
Mhm.
into believing something, and her intentions were about singing. Like, her intentions weren't to break the law. Her intentions weren't to sell somebody. Like, I don't understand why we didn't break. I mean, and again, you and I were not there. Maybe it was. And I know you and I both know that what we call normies, normal people, have a really hard time listening to cases like this, because it's just so far out of their mindset. It's so hard to wrap your mind around, what goes on, um,
Mhm.
during transactions.
Oh, even before that, leading up to it, it's
Mhm.
just that the mental coercion and the force, which is if
Right.
you don't do it, this is what's going to happen to you. And then the fraud, well, like in this case, was promising her something. So that was fraudulent. And
Yeah.
uh,
I hope she gets a good attorney when she gets home.
I don't know. I wonder. I know if I were her, I don't, well, I think this is a prime example of why many survivors choose not to go to court.
Right.
It's mentally got to be so taxing. And I don't think even, I never did bring any charges to any of my traffickers. And I don't think to this day that I could.
Yeah.
Because when you go on the stand, you realize, okay, your prosecutors are going to be more friendly to you. They're going to help you share your story and experience. But then the defense is going to come out there and just tear you apart. And mix your words, say, oh, you really wanted this, you agreed to this. And so no survivor wants to go through that. The court system is just not friendly to human trafficking survivors.
And I think the way that even, during the grooming process, at least through I'll just speak from my own experience, they don't come out, the individual that's recruited you and grooming you doesn't come out and say, "Hey, this is my intention." It's the, "Hey, I'll give you this record deal if you do this," and da 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 da. And even you have mentioned to me that I was very fortunate that I started to recognize the signs of what was really going on,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could make my own decision. And statistically, and just interacting with victims that they're kind of still out in the life, or those that work in the sex industry, they don't really understand what trafficking is. And
Yeah.
so if they don't even understand, because they're the victim, and it was coercion and it was fraud, how do you explain that, um, to a jury, or to the public, to yourself even? Uh,
Right.
and I know for me, it took me a couple years to even realize that I was a victim of circumstance when the recruiting first happened. Like, I just never thought something like this could happen to me, and I'm sure all the victims that were approached, I would assume, felt the same exact way. Like, what's going on? Is this really happening? That kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I can understand, truthfully, in the beginning, maybe she agreed, okay, I'll do one of these parties to get this record deal, not thinking that maybe this is what it turned out to be. It turned out to be.
Hmm.
Um, it's hard to say, but she had tremendous courage, and
Yes.
I'm proud of her, and the others that testified as well. I still think that this just sets back the progress that a lot of us have worked to educate, and it shows that we still need to do a lot of educating going forward
Hmm.
to help people understand the concept of the mental grooming aspect, the fear factor, just all of that, and putting it in terms that people can understand. Some people don't even know what coercion means. What does that mean?
Right.
So I know there are some survivor advocates out there, but I don't think there's enough in the court system, enough that are brought on the stand to say, okay, this can be why so and so is acting this way, and
Right.
explain it.
And I
Um,
wonder too, like, when you're interviewing the jury, because this is, a jury is supposed to be a collection of our peers. And do you want a jury that understands what human trafficking is,
right.
so that they can make a coherent and comprehensive decision?
That's a very true point. I wonder if that was included when they had jury selection, if there was someone there. Um, I don't know, to explain that, if that
Yeah.
even could be a part of it. I don't know. This is something else I read. Um, so the evidence against Diddy included searing testimony from his two longtime girlfriends who described a pattern of abuse and coercion dating back to 2008. Diddy controlled these women, their careers, their homes, and their sex lives. He coerced them into sex with other men, extorted them with the videos he made of them doing it, and beat them when they tried to leave. Sure sounds like a trafficker.
Yeah.
But when prosecutors failed to prove it, um, yeah, that he was, I think the prosecution was some way trying to say that he was running a sex ring. I don't know about
Yes.
that, but all that other stuff sure sounded
Sounds
um,
exactly
yeah,
like like a, because again, there was like another advocate I was listening to, the racketeering part of it, and trying to prove, like, you needed three parties in it. And the prosecution didn't really step forward and talk about the other two elements, and they never directed it directly of who the other two parties were, um to show the racketeering piece of it. So
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. We weren't there.
No,
Um
boy, I would have loved to have been there.
yes.
Um, I think it's unfortunate when there's a federal charge that it's not televised, but that's just the rules. Um, where was the other one? I had printed out something else. I thought I did that explains the federal human trafficking laws.
Mhm.
And per the law, it seemed like the prosecution met everything, but then the defense, again, they just had to poke holes in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm curious. Okay, so we're up against a long weekend, a holiday weekend. Do you think
Yes.
sometimes the jurors are like, we just wanted to get done with it so we could
Yeah.
go home?
That's true.
I don't know, and I'm not putting anything on the jurors, but I just wonder these things sometimes. And also, in such a high profile case, how come they weren't sequestered? How come they
Yes.
were allowed to go home and scour the internet and watch things that why were they not sequestered?
How long was the trial, do you know?
I think it was 7 weeks maybe.
Okay, that sounds
I
right.
could be completely wrong, but it was long. But that's what if you get called for jury duty, that's what you have to expect.
Right.
So I am I'm sad for the survivor community because now I kind of wonder if this verdict has given those that choose to exploit other individuals, whether it's through just sexual abuse or um, trafficking, that they feel like the laws don't matter. They can get away with what they want because it's going to scare anybody from coming to testify.
Yes. And even I want to say, survivors or victims that are currently being trafficked, and law enforcement's working with them on building a case and testifying, and then you hear about this, like how does this impact the cases that are already um being developed and getting ready to go to court?
That's a very good point. I don't know. I think that if I were in that shoe, I would be very nervous
Yes.
and questioning whether I wanted to subject myself to the almost abuse from the cross examination.
Right.
Uh, I don't know
Yeah.
that I could do that. I don't. Do you think? And I don't believe there was any human trafficking survivor expert put on the stand. Do you think that could have helped in some way? Maybe change the verdict?
I do. I do think it would have had an impact at least.
Okay.
Um, I know a couple of, national survivors that do testify as, as a like a, what do they call it? Subject matter experts.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to say even it just their presence may have had an impact on those that testified as well. Um, just to have somebody in their corner, because you and I both know that you can just feel very lonely
Hmm.
um, when you're up against something so hard, and you again, you're trying to be brave. You think you know that you're doing the right thing, but it it takes a lot of courage, um, and just confidence, I want to say as well. So I think I just feel like if they're even if the survivor advocate was allowed to sit in the audience, then maybe that would have helped too. So I hadn't, as far as I know, nobody, there was no survivor advocate with in that case. From what
Yeah.
I've heard, all of the advocates that I knew were all outside. None of them were inside the courtroom.
Right. I think it could possibly have changed the verdict if you had an expert on the stand just explaining the mental coercion and control of a trafficking victim, explaining why what may appear as normal behavior is being controlled by invisible strings, like they're the puppeteer. They can look at you a certain way and you know what they're going to expect from you. They could say just a certain word. So explaining how somebody, like in Cassie's case, could continue to submit to these parties because, one, she was promised a record deal, and then two, when you're drugged, you're you're not consenting. There's no
Yeah.
way, because you're completely out of it.
Yeah.
Um, I just wonder if it would have helped the jury just understand the survivor's mind.
And I want to say too, like, a survivor from another case, like similar experiences, isn't so emotionally attached with this case. Like, it's
Right.
not, she's not confronting, he or she is not confronting their attacker or their abuser. And I feel like, and because you think about the prosecution, or I'm sorry, the defendant's um, cross examination, because it wasn't, she didn't, the survivor, the subject matter expert survivor, didn't experience these particular things. It would have been um, I want to say, rational explanation, as compared to what, the victims or the survivors sharing their experiences.
Right, because each survivor's experience is completely different. But at the core, it's that mental control that the trafficker has over that person, whether it be through fear of hurting someone, like we've talked about, controlling food, controlling
Mm-hmm.
so many aspects of your life. And then when you're young, and we've talked about this all the time, that when you're 19, you're not mentally developed enough to even make rational decisions.
Yeah.
They're emotional decisions. And then when you think about all the video footage of what had happened in this case while she was young and going through this abuse, if she's thinking she's going to have a music career, those videos would have destroyed anything. And she also knew that Diddy controlled whether or not she was going to have a music career.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't like the fact that that's like, okay, so you can have you can have the acts and the mean, but then you have to have some type of monetary transaction, whether it's actually money or something like that. But I feel that there was one, because he paid the male prostitutes to have sex with Cassie. So that was paying somebody to fulfill the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And he promised her things that would have made her money.
Yes.
I don't know. It's interesting because all across the board, advocates are having all kinds of different takes on this.
Yes.
Um, this was beyond just abuse, now it's being referred to as like domestic violence. It
Yes.
happens all the time. You can go in and say to law enforcement, you get arrested, and you're like, I think I'm trafficked, and then they come out saying, no, it was domestic violence. I don't get that.
I mean, again, it goes back to, which is what we're working on, right? The definition of what being truly trafficked is. And I'm sorry, based on what you read from, was it the prosecution, or it was his attorney, right? That, or I
Oh,
forget
yes.
what he did to his victims. That's not, I mean, it is domestic violence, but there's money involved in that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. His attorney said that the women were willing participants. Okay, so they're drugged. How are they willing participants to begin with? You're so out of it, you don't know what really is going on.
Right.
I remember that all the time. I was drugged all the time, mainly with like sedatives, where you get in that really relaxed zone, but not to where you're unconscious, but enough that you're very impressionable to what somebody that you have learned is kind of like your alpha in a way,
Yes.
telling you what to do. And if you don't do it, you know what's going to happen where nobody's going to see what happens. And
See, and it would have been nice to have somebody like you in the courtroom and get a chance to see the evidence, right, in his interactions with his victims to confirm whether or not the difference between domestic violence and being exploited.
yeah. I think it would be fascinating to connect more with attorneys that prosecute these cases,
Yes.
and just be able to come in and look at what the evidence they do have and say, okay, this looks really strong in this area,
Mhm.
but you may want to look for something else in this area if that's what you're looking for. Because they have to remember, and I know they do because that's their job, but the defense's job is a lot easier because all they have to do is just poke one hole in it,
Mhm.
and then the whole case just falls out. It would be, I think, empowering to survivors to be able to, those that are comfortable and are willing and want to talk about, well, of course we talk about our stuff and what happens to us, what had happened to us, but I'm just like in a legal setting, because it's just like how people who are in this fight but haven't been groomed or trafficked think they understand it, but there's no way they truly can understand.
Mhm.
No, you can't unless you've lived
I
it.
agree.
Uh, I don't know. I hope he gets some time at least.
Yes. Yeah. I haven't seen, well, we're waiting for the sentencing, right?
Yeah, and I don't
That's
think
what's
that's going to
coming
happen
next.
until October now.
Really?
Yeah, so I know he's good. That's what I heard, but again, I
Okay.
could be wrong. But it's September or October, so he's going to be in jail at least for a while. But it's kind of funny how he just got charged on prostitution charges, which now they're saying then that makes Cassie labeled a prostitute,
Yeah.
and that he took her across lines so he could have other people abuse her. And I just, it makes me sad.
We will definitely need to keep her in prayer for healing
I
from
know.
all of her experiences.
And a lot of protection.
Yes, and a lot
Her
of
and
protection.
the other two that
Mm-hmm.
testified under different different names. Yes, there's a lot of educating we still need to do
I
in
agree.
what human trafficking really is and what it looks like and how it plays out. Makes me sad.
Yes.
Makes me sad, but yet it makes me even more motivated to get out there and talk to more people about it so that we can help the society in general understand this, because it's still such a visible yet invisible crime.
It's very hard, as you can see, it's very hard to prosecute. It's very hard to put a case together. And, I just, what I want to say, whatever help we can do to bring awareness and make sure, like, just make sure that the case is presented to the best of its ability, and that our peers, the jury, is again able to make a coherent and comprehensive decision, that they're not manipulated, um, as well as um, that they have all the facts.
That's right. And that emotion stays out of it.
Yes.
Because I think some people could, and again, it's like, gosh, there's no way that could happen over and over and over again.
Right.
How could that possibly be? Why didn't that person stop it? Why didn't they
Right.
walk away? Why didn't they leave? And it's it's not that easy when
It's
somebody
not.
has a very mental control over you. So anyway, well, this has been a good conversation. Do you have anything in closing that you'd like to share?
No, just that, I feel the same way. I feel like like I said, I was so angry when the verdict came out, but at the same time, it is motivation to to get out there, to as survivors, even just to step out of our comfort zone, to bring that awareness, so that we can get a win. We can get a win under our belts, and not that win or lose, like whatever the case may be, but to ensure that the case is presented to the best of its ability. And I don't think we've heard from the victims yet about how they have felt, right?
No, I
If
don't think we
they
have.
feel that, if the case was presented to the best of its ability, and if they have peace with it, then I would be okay with that. But it doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound like that the justice that we were all kind of seeking on their behalf happened. So
Right.
that's just my last 2 cents.
Yeah, the prosecution had a heavy weight on their shoulders, and because it's so difficult to really convict human trafficking cases, I think this is another thing that we have to look at when it comes to legislation, to see how do we
Yes.
make this language more clear
Yes.
and add in not just
Mhm.
the physical aspect of trafficking, but the emotional aspect as well. So I commend all those that testified, and thank you for doing that. The bravery was undescribable, and I'm sorry for all that they have gone through. And I hope that they can just move on with their lives and have a good life. And that as survivors, we just need to continue to push forward and educate more people, and and help them become comfortable with a very uncomfortable topic.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Jessica, it was good chatting with you. You have a good night, and we
Happy
will
4th
talk
of
soon. I
July.
know.